Hello, folks. My guest today is a psychic medium, a tarot card reader, a mindfulness coach, and he's even an animal communicator. Please welcome Mitchell Osborne.
This is the Powers Project.
这是台湾的 Powers 计划。
日本から The Powers Project.
Aus Deutschland das Powers Project.
Dall'Italia il progetto Powers.
The Powers Project.
Hi, Mitchell. How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
Good. It's been an interesting day so far, so I'm looking forward to this because I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting podcast today.
I hope so.
I have faith that it will be. So you're a psychic and a tarot card reader?
I am. We all go through that branding phase of who are we, what do we do?
Right.
And right now, I think I've settled on that I am a psychic medium who does tarot card readings, animal communication, and also mindfulness coaching.
So what's the difference between psychic and medium?
So most people will agree that a psychic is someone who's kind of working with the here and now energy. Like if I were reading you, I'm going to read like your energy right now, your relationships right now, your relationship to your job, potentially your health. Some people don't like to go there. A medium is someone who's usually connecting to those who've crossed over, maybe an angelic realm or spirit, God, source, all that is. So I usually say psychic is kind of the here and now stuff, and mediumship is kind of anything that's beyond the physical.
Oh, okay.
Or on the other side of the veil, as some people will say.
Okay, and then you also read tarot cards,
Yes.
and what do they do exactly when you're reading those?
So it's interesting because I love tarot cards. I mean, and in my training, I kind of started with tarot cards in the beginning, and I love them. And then when I dove into mediumship with one of my teachers, she was from a spiritualist church, and some of them don't use cards because they feel it's a crutch. And I'm glad I had enough self-confidence to realize, okay, that's what she meant. For me, the tarot cards are a very viable way of connecting to spirit on the other side. And if you or listeners don't know, tarot cards are typically 78 cards. There's a major arcana section of the cards, which is kind of like the monk's journey to enlightenment or the fool's journey, which it starts with the fool and ends with the world. And there's 22 of those. And then the minor are made up of 4 suits, just like a typical plain deck. Pentacles are coins, which is the earth element. Swords, which is air. Cups, which is water, and wands, batons, or sometimes people use it. That's the fire element. So there's the 4 elements, and then ether or spirit, which is kind of the major arcana. So yeah, and they, for me and most people, what they will do is help them kind of connect to the other side. They have their own specific meanings and kind of definitions and interpretations that just like someone who might study, music would start with the beginning, the basics, the scales, and understand music, and then break all the rules later. So, if you study, tarot, you're going to probably learn what the original meanings were from like the Rider-Waite or, Crowley's deck or the Thoth deck, because those are kind of some of the main ones that originally popped up, years and years and years ago. And now if you Google it, there are thousands of decks, and there are hundreds on Kickstarter right now. And like a neat one I saw the other day was the Groovy Tarot, which it took the Rider-Waite original deck, and it looks like someone from the 70s created it. And they literally use almost the exact same images. And you look at it and you go, wow, that really feels good. I like that. It seems fun. And so when you start looking at another deck, you might, I typically read in layers. So I'll go, okay, the original definition might mean this, this, and this. But for me, this card has often popped up and meant this as well. And then as a psychic, I add in my, intuitive abilities and psychic abilities to tap in what that card might be meaning for them at that moment. So it's constantly and forever changing, at least.
Oh, okay. And so, all right, so psychic, medium, tarot card reader, and
Animal Communicator.
Animal Communicator, okay. So
that was the most reluctant thing.
Was it?
Yeah. Because I was like, I don't want to read animals. I want to read, I want to read people
Right.
because when I'm reading you, I get feedback.
Right.
With the animals, it's very interesting, and I always say this to people, and they're kind of sometimes they're shocked, but they get it when I explain. Before I'm currently married, been with my husband and partner 13 years now, but before when I lived alone, I didn't have any animals. I loved them. I didn't really say, I wouldn't say I connected to them at that time, but then when we got together and finally moved in together, he had a dachshund, a Pomeranian, an American Shorthair cat. And I remember, I was studying hard and heavy with this stuff in classes and things. And I was like, I think I know exactly what these animals are talking about. And I jokingly said to one of my teachers one time, I said, oh my God, I can see my business card one day saying pet psychic. And, be careful what you say and wish for. And it's one of those where I hardly ever will toot my horn or anything like that. But man, it's one that came so easy to me, and it's one I shied away from the most. And probably about 30-40% of my business is, that work with animals, live or crossed over. And I do this work. I have a full-time career in fitness, but I do this work, nights and weekends. So it's my part-time career, part-time love.
So when you're communicating with these animals, they're talking to you the way I'm talking to you.
No. I am very clairaudient, which means clear hearing.
Okay.
I'm very clairvoyant, which I see clear seeing. So, I see the images in my head, and I can hear the voice. It's almost like talking on the telephone and you're formulating your next question where you can hear the other person on the other end kind of answering your first question. So when I'm working with animals, cats, it's pretty much cats and dogs are kind of the top. Horses seems to be the third in line. Then from there, just kind of one or two hit and miss here and there, snakes, birds, and things like that. But if I'm talking to a cat, a lot of times I feel like I am literally talking to them. I feel like they have their own unique voice. They know what they're saying. I always tell people, if you've ever seen that cartoon where it's like two humans are bending over looking at a cat going, I wonder what they're thinking. And then the other side is like two aliens looking through the eyes of the cat. That is literally what it's like. They're literally like alien beings. And it's just because I feel like they're so intelligent. They're so independent. With dogs, a lot of the small dogs, I'm usually kind of talking right to them. Bigger dogs, I usually feel like they're just so earthy and so physical that sometimes I feel like I'm talking to either an interpreter or like their higher self. And when I say higher self, that makes me feel almost like when I connect to and talk to spirit. There's if I'm just asking God, spirit, source, energy, what do I need to do by this situation? That's kind of how it feels like they're kind of talking back to me. And a lot of times it's not so much audible words in my head, but it's just a clear kind of knowing, and I just kind of hear it in my head. So it's I'm a very logical person. So yes, I understand how weird it sounds.
It's just very interesting. It's just
oh yeah.
So I'd almost think like if you're talking to a cat, it would be turned away from you and just act like it's talking, but not to you. And you just might be lucky enough to hear what they have to say because, they always act like, it's you want them, they don't want you.
Well, and when I teach animal communications, one of the things, that I teach about is, like if your cat's doing something you don't want it to do, the best way to communicate what you want is positive reinforcement. And I always use Bartolomeo, our cat. He's this 20-pound, and he's not fat. He's just huge. He is my soulmate. That is all I can say. And, when he came to us, he would splash the water with his paw and empty the bowl, and it was going against the baseboards and stuff like that. So, that old saying like, okay, let me put my money where my mouth is. So I sat down on the ground and I was like, Bart, use your mouth. And then what I do is I send an image of him bending over, drinking out of the water bowl with his mouth. And it took like 5 or 10 minutes just to get him to do it once. And I was like, good boy, good boy. And then every once in a while, I'll see him using his paw and I'll go, Bart. And he'll look at me and he'll like put the paw in the water. I'm like, use your mouth. So rather than saying, don't use your paw, because the moment you're saying that, that's the image you're thinking. Just like if in your house, dogs are not allowed on the couch, you may say, get off the couch, get off the couch. Well, the image you're thinking is them on the couch, usually.
Right.
And for me, it's like they're looking at you going, I think you want me to get off the couch, but the picture you're sending me is me getting on the couch. And then another good one is if two cats have gotten in tussle in a fight, and then every time you see them walking towards each other, you immediately think, oh my God, they're going to get in a fight again. You literally just said, please act out this scene in my head that I just sent you, which is me remembering the last time we got in a fight. And again, it's it's kind of like with kids, put your clothes away rather than don't just sit around on your butt, do your homework. So it's just a positive reinforcement and sending the mental pictures of what you want to
So
happen.
are you saying that everybody has this ability to send these mental pictures and, that they have an effect on? Because here's the thing.
I think so.
My best friend and I, we have a cat, or it's his cat. It's his cat. However, this cat meows from the time you get up, and it wants you to follow it to the kitchen and watch it eat. Every time, eat. Like it just wants to make sure that you're following it, and and so you can watch it eat. And I'm like, why can't you eat by yourself? Why, like I know you must come out here when I'm not home and eat, and yet when we're there, he wants us to come out to the kitchen and watch him eat. Once he starts eating, he's okay, and then you can walk away. But he wants you to watch him.
So if we sat down or we were on a virtual call, and when I do animal communication, it's usually not with the animals because it's usually about the humans. I would say, so who in the house might not like to eat by themselves? Is there someone who doesn't want to eat alone? It's funny because my husband doesn't really like to eat by himself. And he'll wait for me to get home, even though it's way past his time or something like that. But I would say, look into the humans, see who might be having a behavior similar to this, because they will mirror and reflect back what's going on in our house. Just like, a cat that might be, peeing in the house. You might say, okay, which one of you humans is pissed off at the world? And you're just peeing everywhere you can. And then also you said he meows, meows, meows. This, I would say, who is the vocal one that may be telling everybody what to do in the house, and see if you can kind of curb that behavior. Because again, I believe that, and pretty much every one of my teachers that I've worked with believe that they're here to teach us lessons. They're sentient beings who are coming to our lives. I mean, almost everybody I meet can tell the story of, oh my gosh, I walked up and I saw the cat, I saw the dog, I saw the horse, and I knew it was mine. I knew it was coming home with me. And it's just one of those things. Or another thing that happens, look in your own life. If you've ever just moved to a new house, or right before you moved, an animal passed away, or you arrive at a new house and a new animal arrives in your life, they come and go in chapters in your life. And a lot of times they'll come and go, with trauma too. Like if a spouse died or your mother died, boom, an animal comes into your life, and it's this connection. And I think it's often about healing and just bringing your awareness, because they do, I can't remember the statistics, but it's like elderly people who especially live alone, to have a cat or a dog, they typically live a lot longer.
Right.
Because there's a reason to live. There's responsibility. And there's not a whole lot more fun and more peaceful and more calm than petting a dog or a cat. The cats tend to go after a minute or two, because I think they're just like sponges and absorb your energy. Where dogs, I think they have a contract with us humans that is just undeniable. That they're here to really take us to another level of growth.
It's funny because, again, and I agree. I mean, I always consider myself a dog person until we got this cat, Logan. And my best friend had another cat. That cat, you just go like this on your chest, and that cat would jump up on his chest and lay there like a dog and wouldn't leave. And Logan was the exact opposite. Like, he's like, I don't need you. Now, as he's gotten older, he's much more loving, and he's coming, of course, he's acting like, oh, I don't want to be picked up, but he sits there for you to pick him up. And then, of course, he won't leave once you pick him up. But he won't jump up there. He's not going to act like he wants, like it's his idea. It's got to be your idea that you want him.
And typically, them staying with you, especially like laying on you or touching you, that's usually about your energy. So if you're in a peaceful, calm, relaxed state, they're probably going to be able to stay a little bit longer. If you're agitated, if you're on the phone, you're texting, and you're having a rough conversation, then they're probably going to get up and move away. But we had a cat named Toby. And my husband would always say, oh, that's the mean cat. Just leave him alone, y'all, when people would come over to the house. And one day I said, okay, from this day forward, we're not going to use the words mean cat. We're going to just say, this is Toby. He's a little particular. Just ignore him, because he'll rub against you and then he'll swat at you. And unfortunately, he didn't have front claws because the previous relationship Fabian had took him out. And, and I just said, that's just who he is. And every once in a while, someone would, oh, I'm a cat person. And they try to pick him up. And I said, listen. I don't know what went on. This is where I get bitchy. I was like, I don't know what went on when you were a child, but please don't work out your insecurities and lack of love on my cat. It really doesn't want to be with you, so just put it down. Because a lot of people, you see those people who walk in the front door and they do that, oh, come on,
Right.
come see me. It's that you're winding your animal up. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. And you can look at a puppy that when it gets wound up, it often pees on the floor because
Right.
it's so excited it loses its control. And, same with the cat. You pick it up, you hold it. The moment it squirms, let it go. Set it down. It's like a straitjacket for them. It's just, your energy may not be that good. And, Bartolomeo, I can pick him up, put him over my shoulder like a sack of grits, and he is in heaven. He just looks around. He rubs against my face. Sebastian, our Himalayan, I pick him up. 2 minutes, he's ready to get down. But then he'll stay at your feet and let you rub and pet him. He just doesn't want to be held.
Right.
So I honor that in them. So that's the biggest thing is honor what they're saying. And most people, again, please love me. Please,
Exactly.
please let me hold you and kiss you and love you.
All right. So there's a couple things I want to ask you.
Yeah.
All right. So you believe that everyone or close to everyone has some sort of psychic ability or some ability to communicate with animals at least, or
Yeah, I do believe we're all are psychic. I do believe we all have intuition. I do believe we all have the ability to, connect on the other side, mediumship wise. And the common, kind of analogy people say is, everybody can't be a Celine Dion, but we all can sing. Pavarotti probably came out singing very well, but there are those people that could sing okay, and then they developed it to become better and better, and their voice and vocal cords become stronger, more clear, more on pitch. So I do believe we all have that ability. I just think some it's natural. I jokingly say to a lot of clients and people that I teach, I said some of the best psychics are salesmen. They've been trained how to sell. But I also feel like that they're in that environment where they know exactly how to work a client to buy. And, they probably would not admit that they're like psychic and using the abilities, but they're certainly trusting their intuition and their instinct. And it's because it's like they've learned all the skills and then they're like in their toolbox and they know intuitively which one to pull out.
well, and I guess that's because I would agree with you, and yet what I would ask you is that really a psychic ability, or is that just an ability to read people? Because a lot of people think that psychics, like we're talking about the Miss Cleos, the Dionne Warwick, psychic friends,
Yeah.
and people like that they just have this ability to ask the right questions to figure out where this person's at. And then make general vague statements, like maybe saying something to the effect that, it seems like you may need some, change in your life or something.
Yeah.
Well, everybody needs change in their life.
Yeah.
And I had one friend who said they went to a psychic, and the psychic said, when are you going to finish that book? And he's like, oh my God, how did she know? And I said, because everybody is writing a book. That's why everybody has that unfinished book.
Yeah.
So for them to say something like that, that is just something that almost every human, or at least every American, has sat down and said, oh, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
So,
and I absolutely, completely understand that question. And for anybody listening, who might be going, why is he asking? I take no offense because you're wanting to know.
right.
And yes, there are charlatans out there, just like any field. There are people that are going to take advantage of, it's on all the psychic and tarot pages that I'm part of on social media. Every once in a while, we'll get a post of somebody who took somebody for like $800,000. And
I
I'm
saw
like,
that.
oh my
I was
gosh.
like, wow.
First of all, how much are they charging a session? And, and yes, and I know personally, I'm sitting there with a client and my goal is to show up 100% for them. Whatever job you do and someone's paying you money, hopefully you're showing up 100% for them. That's my first goal. My second goal is to be aware, to be conscious of what they're really after, and to, and I own up with someone, like you just said, if I say, when are you going to finish that book? And they'll say something, I'll say, no, I realize that's a general statement. I said, and I'll tap in to see if I can't dig a little deeper of what the book is about or what it might be. Or you started it back in 2000, you picked it back up again, you gave it to a publisher in 2005. That's evidential, and that's
Right.
when it's really good. And it's funny because I do a lot of mediumship, and I work with spirit, which is mediumship work, but I don't get a lot of people coming to me wanting to talk to the person that crossed over. I just don't get a lot of that. And it's not that I don't want it. It's just not what I attract. What I attract are usually people who, I feel stuck in my life. I'm not sure what the next step is. I'm having relationship issues. And a lot of here and now stuff. And when I'm working with them, a lot of times grandmother energy will come in or grandfather, and they might have some words of wisdom for them, but they're not there necessarily to talk to grandmother who passed away. James Van Prague, Long Island Medium, there's, I think Matt Frazier is the newest one that's come out. I've seen almost all of Tyler Henry. I've seen almost Lisa Williams. I've seen almost all of them in person.
Right.
And when they're in person, you get to see the real thing. Just like we talked about the podcast. This podcast is live. There is no editing, so you're going to get to hear all the clicks and bumps and
Yes,
and
you
stuff like
are.
that. But, what you're seeing is an edited version. And it doesn't necessarily give me, those who are working in the streets, a bad name, but it's surely not the norm. I think, in Long Island Medium, Teresa Caputo, I think she's a great psychic and medium. I've seen her live. She does a great job. The one thing that I'm always conscious of is, asking questions. Something as simple as, was your mom a nurse? Rather than asking a question, I will say, I'm seeing a woman who's got a white hat on. I feel like she was probably a nurse. Makes me feel like this might have been in the 40s and 50s because of the way she's dressed. Rather than asking, was your mom a nurse? I'm saying what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling, which that I think that was what I was taught, and that's what seems to work better for most people. Because the moment you start asking questions, it does feel like you're digging. It does feel like you're trying to find answers or leading them on, kind
Right.
of a thing. But, when I'm done with clients, every once in a while I kind of go, I have to reevaluate. How did I do? Did I, not that I don't say did I lie to them, did I cheat, but I'm like, how did I process the information? And there are those times where I literally go, you know what, that was a rough reading for me. And I'm usually pretty honest because sometimes I'm blabbering on about one subject matter and then I get to the next one. I'm like, man, I just feel blocks here. I said, I don't know why. I said, maybe it's because this is just not something you need to hear or know about right now, or because you're iffy about it. They want to know where they want to work. What's their next job? And I'm like, I don't know. And if I don't see anything, even a recommendation or a suggestion or an area, I said, that probably just tells me you don't know what you want either.
Right.
And they're usually like, you're right. I don't know what I want. But then all of that comes back to this. I believe that we are the creators of our path. I believe that if I predict something for you, the moment we hang up the phone and walk away from this, you're creating your path again. And if I say, oh, yes, that job you applied for, you're going to get it next week. But between now and then, everything you do is a catalyst for continuing down that path or making a change. Because I believe that what we see is the most likely outcome, but there are an infinite number of outcomes, very matrix-like. It's like
Right.
string theory and all that, multiple dimensions, so if you like that, then hold that as an intention. And it's interesting when someone comes up and says, oh, I just met this guy last week and I want to know how it's going to go. And I just keep getting the feeling like, I don't know about this person. I said, what if the person that you met, they seem nice, but what if there's someone better for you? Okay, that's good. But what about this person? They can't even take into their mindset there might be someone better for them. And that could
Right.
have been just a stepping stone to shift and change.
Well, and I like this point that you just brought up is because I think that when we put something out there, and especially if this person holds you, as an expert in an area, much like we do with doctors. Dr. Bruce Lipton talked about the biology of belief,
Mm-hmm.
and basically, saying that when doctors sit there and say, "Oh, well, you have this, and and you'll never be able to walk again," people who buy into that will never walk again, and yet these doctors have been proven wrong by people who didn't buy into it and said, "No, I will walk again,"
Yeah.
and so they set their own path and didn't just take the expert's advice. And so when you say, you may go, oh, well, I see this job coming up. Well, automatically, yes, you're going to get a job within 2 weeks. That person automatically starts doing the things that would be necessary. If he or she had just done it to begin with, would probably get that job anyway.
Exactly.
So in one sense, one could say it's not so much a prediction or a reading, but actually you're setting them in motion to do those things to get the things they want to begin with.
And I can't remember who said this, it's not mine, but we are always constantly creating, co-creating, or miscreating. And the miscreating is something I quote all the time is, worry is literally a prayer for the very thing you don't want. And the example I use is you're driving down I-4 in Orlando, deadliest highway in the United States, and you're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to get in a wreck, I don't want to get in a wreck. You're literally asking the universe, get me in. That's the vibration, wreck. That's what you're sending out there. And what I tell people is flip it on its head. And this is when I drive, because I go down crazy John Young, get on I-4 all the way down near Disney. And I just say, show me the fastest, safest, easiest way to get to work. That's what I say. And sometimes I'm driving like, okay, get in the left lane, but the left lane looks like, and I get in the left lane, and all of a sudden, 2 semi-trucks are in the middle of the right lane, and I'm past them, and I get to work quicker and faster. So, I do believe that's what one thing I help do. And I love the word coach. I don't use it in like a lot of my stuff, but I feel ultimately I'm a coach and a teacher. So a coach typically believes the person they're coaching has everything they need right within them. The coach is just often asking the right questions, poking and prodding in the right places to get that person to realize they have everything within them. And then, of course, as a teacher, I'm always, continually to teach them, this is how you best can manifest and create. And people often say, if you could teach kids one thing, what would you do? Well, I have to choose two. One, meditate, be mindful. But the other thing is your words are powerful, and also your thoughts.
Absolutely.
And they create your path, just like I talked about worry.
Yeah, I 100% not only just agree with that, I also teach that, and my friend also teaches that especially when you do self-talk, when we say things like, oh, I'm so stupid. Yeah. You say that enough, you start believing it, and you start doing things that you would consider stupid. And so,
because you have to, you set that, you have to pay the piper. You just said you're stupid, so
right.
You got to find ways to prove what you just said is true.
Right, exactly. And the subconscious mind learns through repetition, and so as you keep saying it, it starts getting ingrained into the subconscious mind to where, like you said, all of a sudden you start doing all these stupid things, or things that you consider stupid because you've told your subconscious mind you're stupid, and it believes it now. And
I was the obese kid between two skinny athletic brothers. I was 240 pounds at 15 years old. And my older brother was pretty rough on me with the name calling and stuff like that. Just the time, the 70s. And, at one point he stopped calling me those names, but I kept calling myself those names. Every time I walked by the mirror, I'd go, ugh, ugh. And, I would not let anyone say that to me just walking down the street, but yet I would say that to myself in the mirror. So that was one of those things that I had to really be conscious of. And, when I finally started making the joke, every time I walked by, I'd be like, oh, look at you. That's right, sexy man. Yeah. And it's a joke at first, but now I can walk by and just say, you're doing good.
Yes, exactly. It's funny because I do hypnosis, and like you, I've done personal training for decades. And I had a client who she wanted to quit smoking, and so there's a couple things. I'll tell you a story later on about how I got her to quit smoking and how the brain it's a magnificent thing and how it works. Yeah. However, she was having an issue with her weight as well, and she's had it ever since she was a little girl. So I did a little age regression with her, and we went all the way back to when she was 12 years old, and some 12-year-old boy said, "You're fat," and she wasn't. Yeah. He just said it. But because he said it, she believed it, and she started gaining weight from that point on. And so when I took her back and let her realize, you're letting a 12-year-old, dictate your weight, as an adult, that this 12-year-old still has power over you. she realized how ridiculous that was.
Yeah.
And it was very easy to to get rid of that whole thought process now that she was fat, and she didn't think of herself that way anymore. And she lost a lot of weight, and she got very healthy, and she's kept it off, and she's done great. But it was so funny that one person, a 12-year-old, could sit there and set this thing in motion for her. And again, it's the power of words. So, when did you realize, at what age did you realize that you not just had the gift, but like more so than the majority of people out there?
Well, growing up, I was the hyperactive child that would be up at 6 a.m. on Sunday morning. Everybody else is asleep. And I don't know where I got this from, but like 6 or 7 years old, I'd be in the living room with the cards, the deck of cards, just playing cards. And I would shuffle them, and I'd put one on my head, and I'd try to guess the color first, because that's 1 out of 2 chance. And I'd try to guess the suit, because that's 1 out of 4. And then I'd try to zone in even more. So at that age, I was digging into something, and I remember trying to move pencils with my mind. And it's funny because if anyone out there has ever done this, you know what I'm talking about. You can do it. You just have to figure out the end.
Right.
You have to figure out the way, because it's just like I know I can fly, but I got to figure out how to do it. And, growing up, we didn't talk much about that stuff, but my mom was very prophetic with dreams and things like that. So we could talk about dreams, which is a spiritual realm and component of all this. And then 1999 was kind of the year where like December of 1999, right before the, 2000 came around. Just, that's where I finally pretty much came out of the closet. That's where books in Barnes and Noble started calling my name, and I started, diving in and reading. So it was literally like I was working on my master's degree for like 8 years. And then flash forward to about 2007. So studying on my own privately with the windows closed so nobody would see me with the book. I finally in 2007 or 8, I started taking actual classes where it was just a big opening for me of, connecting with other people. Cards came in, psychometry, which is holding an object and picking up feelings, images, and messages from an object, was a huge one for me. So, I'd say probably December 1999 was when it all really started shifting for me. And just, I was 33 years old, very magical number for a lot of people. And then I went, after all that time studying and in classes, 2009 went professional. And of all places, it was at Universal Studios in Orlando. They actually have tarot card readers there. And it was a really good experience because I'm be careful what you ask for. I remember reading John Edwards' book. And he said, the flea markets on Long Island were my boot camp. That's where I got my training. And I said, where's my boot camp? Well, I'll never forget sitting in this tiny shop the size of a bathroom. Other side of the wall is the Blues Brothers playing so loud I could barely hear myself. And there's usually a butt in my face as they're buying product from the counter, and I'm sitting there with the client and I'm reading them. And it was funny because because I was very serious about what I was doing. I'm getting paid for the first time. And like people would sit there and they go, oh, this is serious. This is not just, universal fun.
Right, yeah.
This is not just magic. This is serious. And I'm like, yes, this is serious. And it was a really powerful boot camp training because it helped me to develop real good focus, especially with all the crazy music playing.
So, all right, so you mentioned John Edwards, and so what is your take on John? I'm going to ask you John Edwards, and I'm going to ask you Tyler Henry, because I really like Tyler Henry, but of course my best friend will tell you that's because he's a twink. And he goes, you just believe him because he's a twink. I go, whatever. I go, don't you see these people crying? I said he hit home with something there. So I'm sure you're aware of the South Park episode.
I haven't seen it. Which on John Edwards?
On John Edwards.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, they tore him apart on that show.
Oh, that's funny. I think he's really great at what he does. Lisa Williams was another one I followed, and I followed her personally too back in the day, and she was on, had a great TV show, and as well as I do, and probably most everybody listening, the moment you get on TV, you've got to produce and you've got to keep them coming back. And when you're on, this is why John Edwards does his own thing just online. And, like Long Island Medium, the character is what the show is about. Her ability is there too, but it's her character and her family. And, John Edwards, I always thought he was very good at what he did. I don't know. I've never seen him live, but I think he does a very good job. I appreciate his direct nature, and when he kind of pushes people like, nope, I'm seeing this. Just you'll have to keep thinking about it because that's definitely there. Uh, Tyler Henry, I like. I sweat with him because he's a sweater. I don't know if you notice it, but he gets hot.
Actually, yeah.
I'm like nervous for him. I've seen him at the Hard Rock here in Central Florida, and he really did a great job that night. But I love what he did more than anybody else live, and that was he taught. He taught us lessons about how to connect. He taught us his journey to get where he was. So it was a really well produced show. And then when he did do readings for the audience, I would say 80% of them were very good, very moving. There's about 20% that was kind of like, kind of hit or miss type of a thing. And that's the way it is. This is one reason why I love to go see them live, because it makes me feel better about the work that I do. I'm like, we can't be perfect, but, it also helps me to see what they do that I like and try to incorporate in what they do that I don't really like. It makes me feel, like asking questions, and I just avoid that because it made me feel like, okay, you're digging, and not that he did that. I think the way his style is very good. Another young one was Monica the Medium. Her style was very good, I felt. But yeah, and I've been approached probably 4 times, done interviews or auditions, and I remember I just kept telling Spirit, if I can do this without compromising my integrity and what I believe, then let it go forward. And it just never went further. Plus, the other thing was I have a full-time career that I love. And they're going to have to come up with a good bit of money, which they won't,
right?
For me to jump ship and go. And they're going to have to guarantee more than 1 year for me to jump ship and go. And it never came to fruition. But it was, it was fun trying. And it was one of those things where it also made me think, you know what? I like to have the control that I have. And I have a good, life and career that I'm enjoying. This is a big supplemental part of it, which I love. And I can maintain the love for it. Because I always thought if they're like, I'm doing a reading on camera and they're like, cut. I'm like, can we go back and do that again? I'm like, I don't feel good about it. I would literally go, I don't feel good about it, because I'm not going to say the same things,
right?
Because it would feel like I'm cheating. It would feel like I'm rehearsing it, and like I said, I always told Spirit, don't take me any farther unless it would be one where I can have control and feel good about the product that comes out, and not just be, because I'm also not a dramatic person. I'm not going to be the drama. If anybody's going to be drama, it's going to be the people around me. Because I have the ability to be very, I don't want to say disconnected, but I do emotionally. If someone's sitting in front of me and their child was killed and murdered, I'm here to do a job, and that is to connect. So the emotional component of it doesn't usually come into play as they may be crying and stuff like that. And that's the only time I would use the word gift. I think that's one of my gifts, that I can be very present and step up and do the job. I jokingly say, because years ago when I was in therapy for all the stuff that I was going through, I was like, am I just a cold, callous son of a bitch? And they go, no. And I'm a Pisces, so you would think I would be a whole lot more emotional about things. But yeah, I think that offers me the ability to do my job. But then also when that client walks out the door, I don't hold on to their stuff. Because a lot of psychic and mediums are still worried about the client they had that day that was so emotional or so upsetting. As they fall asleep, they're still thinking about him. And unfortunately, when you walk out my door, I'm done with you. When you come back, I'm usually like,
I think you have to be that way to be able to survive. It'd be just like anybody, like EMTs, police officers, doctors. They would have to be able to let go. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do their job. So I can understand that. So psychics have different ways of, like Tyler Henry would always draw. And John Edwards would always go, I see a woman with the name starts with a P, which I thought was again, better than I just as somebody who would watch him on TV, I'd go, oh, that's lame. There's somebody's going to have a lady named that starts with a P in the audience, and so. But I noticed that Tyler Henry would draw. What is your thing? Like, do you have a thing, or do all psychics have a thing, or a certain way they process this?
I imagine they all have a process and their own protocol. For me, most of the time I'm using tarot cards. The moment my hand just naturally puts the tarot cards away is if I'm doing animal communication or I'm literally talking to someone on the other side. The cards, that's when they're not really for me. Yeah, I don't know what if I say. I don't draw. I don't do that. When I see him and I tap in intuitively why he's doing that, I think it's for him to get the energy moving, to get it flowing, and also it's probably disconnecting the left side of his brain and going more into the right side. I will say this: when I'm working, sometimes I'll have to say, "Oh yeah, 5 years ago," and I'll try to calculate. This is 2020, so 5 years ago was 2015. I'll try to calculate. I'm like, God, I'm good in math, but when I'm in my right side of my brain and I'm doing this intuitive work, and someone says, like, okay, 5 years ago that would be. Well, it's like I have to go back over to the other side, and also if I start going into that side, like if someone says, what kind of career should I have, and I start getting logical, I'll say, okay, this is Mitch talking. This is the logical Mitch talking, because we've already talked about and I know what you do, and I'm feeling this. I said, now let me step back into the more intuitive side, because again, I have a wealth of. I'm 50. I'm going to be 54 this month. And, I've, been personal trainer, group fitness instructor, health and fitness. I'm a hypnotherapist as well. So there's so much in my background that I can offer them that's not psychic and medium. So there's logical stuff that I will tap into as I'm coaching and working with them. But I will immediately go back in. If I go back into the right side and say, okay, now this is more from spirit. This is more from, connecting psychically and what's coming. So I don't know that I have like a process, but I usually am seeing, so very clairvoyant. And a lot of times if you're a client and you're talking, I'm listening to spirit, and spirit's usually answering. Like if you say, well, I don't know where I should go for my trip. Spirit's like, have you ever been to Italy? And I may say this, well, that's top of the list. That's when you know it's fun.
Right.
When it's like, that's the top of my list is Italy. So yeah.
All right. So you said something about, being, correct 80% of the time. What happens, what do you think happens when psychics get it wrong? Like they may not be, correct or 100%. Well, what happens to where you can't be 100%?
I think that either our logical brain gets in the way, or we're misinterpreting it. I think that's the biggest one, that we're misinterpreting the information or the signs and the symbols and things that we're seeing for people. And I'm very reluctant to blame it on the client and say, oh, you're just not remembering. I would never say it that way, but in my mind, I think, okay, I will say something to the effect of, hold on to that, hold on to that. Because you're like, I don't know where that fits. I said, just hold on to it, because Spirit's really being adamant about it. Hold on to that. And I won't say, inevitably they call me and say, oh my God, you were right. This is what it meant. But a lot of times when I say, hold on to that, just write it down or just keep it in mind or be on the lookout for something like that. Again, it could be like we talked earlier. If I say, I keep seeing like a sheep, I don't know what this sheep is all about, and they're looking for a new house. And then all of a sudden they're driving down, they pull into a house, and next door there's a sheep farm. As crazy as that sounds, you know what? I'm going to take that as a good sign for them. And is it a hit? Maybe, and I'm big about that, because I'll say, yeah, I feel like it's a very unusual name, and it's like, I've probably never heard the name, and it's like Ernestina or something like that. And they'll say, oh yeah, it's August. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go with that. I don't think that's right. That what I'm feeling. You're saying it's August. Yeah. But I don't think what I was getting was that. And usually what I'll do is I'll say, you can tell me I'm wrong, or you can tell me it doesn't make sense. And what I will do is dig a little deeper and just kind of ask Spirit, why are you showing me this? What is the reference behind this? And sometimes it just feels like it's a dead end then. And, and I don't know. And it could be just, we're tuned into some other energy, or there could be, if their mom's outside waiting in the car to pick them up, I could be connecting to their energy. But I personally am usually pretty focused on who's sitting in front of me rather than, mom outside in the car waiting on them. But yeah, I think misinterpretation probably the biggest thing. Or let's be honest, they're just a charlatan, and and they're not getting anything right.
And I think that's important that people understand. You're right. There are charlatans. I don't care. There are personal trainers out there who, for the lack of a better word, are charlatans. They don't have the slightest clue what they're doing. They think because they've been lifting weights for 6 months, they can go out and teach other people, and they don't know how to do it properly themselves. There are doctors out there who are charlatans. I'm a big proponent of chiropractors. And yet I know people who go, oh, they're just quacks. And I go, no, there are quacks out there.
Yeah.
You know, just like in the medical field. I go, the ones I've been to, they're great. I go, I've been to acupuncturists who don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
and yet others who are just amazing. So,
Yeah.
so I think that's important to
Well, that's
realize.
I love, and this is, you probably will echo this as well, but I'll never forget the first chiropractor I ever went to, and I was very reluctant. She literally she had a secretary and an office, and that was it. Just her and a secretary. And she said, I don't want to see you here. I want you to be in alignment and in good health. I said, I'm here when you need me. I said, but my job is to put you back, not to keep you coming back.
Right.
And there are those that, sit down and say, okay, we're going to write up this $3,000
right.
plan. And some people may need that, but, we're going back to are you a number or are you a person, and address the person as they come in. But I'm a huge proponent of chiropractics. Mine's right down the road.
I've got like two of them, and depending on what I need is because they're, being a bigger muscular guy, not all chiropractors can give you an adjustment. So I have a guy that who does really well with that. So, and then I have another one who doesn't even adjust you. It's really weird. So, but they both work. So, so do you think what you do would you say that's like foreseeing in the future? Is that?
Yes and no. In other words, I do predict, but I usually follow up with, if you like what I just said, because it's probably most likely outcome. In other words, that's what I typically will see. The most likely outcome, if you're on the path you're on right now, and continue on that path. If you like what you see, then hold that thought as your intention. If you don't like what you see or what I just said, then change your intention. I said, but also what I just said may not be the best. There could be actually something even better out there. And I usually teach people about, manifesting and setting intentions. And, my philosophy is set the intention, then put your attention on it, and then put action behind it. So if your intention is to, find a man, great. But if that's all you do, just one time I set the intention, I want to find a man. And then you do nothing else. Then you keep your attention on it. And then if you never go out and meet someone or sign up for, an app or, eHarmony or whatever, there's no action behind it. Or
Right.
You're actually going out on dates. Do I believe that someone can come knocking on your door and true love? Yeah, because I've read those stories and they're beautiful. And then the other thing that I do, and Wayne Dyer said it best when he was referring and talking back about The Secret, which was a huge movie a couple years ago.
Right.
He said the one thing that he felt The Secret kind of got cut short on or didn't really follow through on was it's about using the emotions to create. And I'm a fan of vision boards, but a vision board can often become a reminder of what you still don't have, or what you set the intention for. And if you're looking at that, beautiful home on your vision board or that relationship on your vision board, and you look at it and you go,
Reminds you of your failures.
Womp, womp, womp. It sucks the energy down. So what I literally, in my classic example, if you're looking for a relationship, when you lay down in bed in the morning, when you wake up, just reach your hand over to the empty spot of the bed and imagine. Don't even look. Don't think of names and shapes and sizes and ethnicities or anything. Genders, nothing. Just pretend you're holding the hand. And when you're holding that hand in your heart center, just feel how good it feels. That you feel safe. You feel financially safe. You feel secure. You feel equal, caring, giving, loving. And when you can hold on to that feeling in your chest every day, that's when the universe goes, oh my God, we got to supply this person with a relationship because they got the emotion. And that's where I think the universe can supply us with something far better than we could ever imagine.
I think for a lot of people out there, one of the reasons why they have a hard time finding that relationship is because they don't believe they're worthy of it, and they don't love themselves. And when I talk to these people and I explain to them, you're not going to find the man or woman of your dreams when you don't believe that you're worthy of that love. And I think that's that needs to be taken care of before they can do anything else. I said you can find people. And you'll be in, one relationship after another. But the person you're wanting, you're not going to find them until you become the person that you want to be. And a lot of them, I think they just dismiss it as if, it's just, nonsense, but it's not.
Because for me, on the highest, like, spiritual level, like really high looking down, everything that we encounter, we have drawn to us. Everything that we encountered. And
agree.
It could be the contract you signed sitting at the table before you even came into carnate form with your abusive relationship, your parents, your loving brother and sister, whatever it can, the dog that's going to be your best friend and break your heart when they pass away. I think all of those things are, part of our kind of divine plan, and that just reminds me, people say, what do you want to hear when you finally cross over and die, pearly gates, whatever you want to call it? I said, honestly, I just want to hear whoever say, well, you got more than most right, because I just don't think we have a clue really what it's all about. And I think we have a tiny idea, but again, then we're going back to our ideas or our beliefs become our reality. And, really we can shift and change that in a heartbeat if we shift and change what our belief is. What is Abraham Hicks saying? Belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over and over.
Right. And I agree with that. That, our beliefs form our perceptions. Yeah. Our perceptions form our reality. And so you want to change your reality. Again, it sounds so cliche, but if you want to change your reality, change your beliefs, which will change your perceptions, which will change your reality. It's that simple. I wanted to ask you one more question because you just said something I don't want to lose track of it. I want to. So when you say you can kind of see in the future, this pertains to whoever you're dealing with. Do you ever see in the future, like for instance, can you predict who's going to win the Democratic nomination, or can you predict who's going to win the presidency this year?
Well, gosh, and I would say I could, but when they're so emotionally charged, it's hard for me it's very difficult. Like, a lot of people believe you don't ever read for yourself. Well, I've had a few big events in my life that I pulled cards on, and I'm like, I'm going to believe that, but then next day I'll pull them again. And that's the trap we can get in, is we keep pulling, thinking, wondering what's going to happen. But, to be honest with everything that's going on, it's so emotionally charged because, and the funny thing is, I will say this. The last 9 months, I'll wake up and I'll go, oh my gosh, there's a chance today that we will have a different person in the White House. And then 5 days later, I'm waking up going, oh, we're back to the same. So it feels like a wave. I mean, that's what it feels like. And also things that I care a lot about, that's when I feel like it's difficult to kind of, quote, predict. But things that I give a crap about, like sports, someone say, who's going to win? I'm like, oh, they're going to win. And then sometimes I love numbers. So a lot of times I'll throw numbers out, and will they be right on? Not really, but will they, like, the ratio be like, I'll say, like, 10 to 30, and they may, be like 9 to 27, something like, very similar, close. And for me, it's energy that I'm reading versus like what it really is. 'Cause I would assume that's a big gap in, like, we'll say football. So that might be what it feels like, just a big gap versus a close game that we're right down to the last minute or something like that. But yeah, so.
So I'm not psychic. I will say, when you were talking about moving the pencils and thinking you could fly, I remember having those feelings, like, and whatever those feelings were squashed. And I won't mention by who, but I just say they were squashed. And so
are they listening, whoever it was?
No. Well, maybe, I don't know. So I can relate to those feelings. And I think when you have those concepts, those beliefs that you can do these things, I just have to figure it out. We're the kind of people who can go on and do great things. We can achieve things that other people go, oh, they're not going to get that. They're not going to achieve that. And yet we do, because we do believe that we can do all these things. We just have to figure out how to do it. Yeah. I decided at this point in my life, after being a personal trainer for 30 plus years, I was like, I want a new challenge. I want, and I decided to change, my field. And most people would go, what are you, crazy? Yeah. And to me, it's just, it makes sense. And I go, I'm going to figure this thing out. And I will. I will figure it out to where this becomes one of the most popular podcasts, in the next several years. And I know people out there are going, he's crazy. And I might be, but I'll still have one of the most popular podcasts out there. So,
and it's funny because when you talk about it, I absolutely can see and feel that this becomes, something important. And I listened to the one about suicide and the comedian that was on, and I told you we were going to talk about that. Maybe this is a good segue, but
yeah.
I listened to that, and your energy is so very grounding. You one of the reasons why I thought you were probably like an earth sign was because it's so very grounding. And I also thought maybe, Gemini because of the communication, but you told me what you were, and that's neither of those. And, but it's, and it depends on what's rising, what's the moon, and all that kind of stuff. So every sign influences you, and every sign is part of who you are. It just depends on where and what and how. But I absolutely can see that this would be something very important. And this is, I'll tell you how I'm working like right now, if you don't mind me kind of diving in. So, so like right now I see the trajectory of this, and it feels very good. And I feel like between now and, you said you're coming up on a year, or?
No, I count the year when, December 7th, past December 7th, only because that's when I had already done some episodes, but we hadn't put them up on iTunes, and iTunes was December 7th. And so that's where I go, okay, that's our start date. And
the reason I was asking, because I kept feeling like, okay, within the first year, you're going to really fine tune and hone it. And it's funny because I literally see it coming down to like 60 minutes. And this is what I say. That doesn't mean that's what it has.
Right.
That doesn't mean what you have to do. But I feel like you consolidate it down. And there's probably a reason, maybe as you start to progress, people say, you know what, I think there are sometimes 90 minutes or things like that. All the standards might say that's a long time. You won't be able to capture people. You might look at the industry standards and say, okay, yeah, 60 minutes is the norm for this type of podcast. But I do feel like, and it's funny because I see someone sit next to you who's like a permanent feature as well. So, what are the Johnny Carson?
Right, Ed McMahon.
Yeah, like so. I see, like, not that I see them in the corner there, but I literally can see somebody there who's assisting you writing things down so you can stay more focused, but also maybe doing all the technical stuff so you don't have to. So that way you're just doing what you love. But yeah, and again, like I said, and in my mind, what I do is I just kind of push your energy out, and it's like a continuum. So I feel like 2 years from the time you started, I feel like you'll be able to go, that may be a place where there might be either like sponsorships or monetization or something. If not sooner, or that's a real pinnacle place where it's become something maybe more financially stable that you can count on. I don't know what your goals are with it or not, because you haven't told me that. But yeah, that's how my brain works. So I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, yeah, I really like how it is. I like your energy, which is one of the reasons I'm sitting here.
Well, thank you.
You asked, and I was like, I think I might have paused, and I think I Googled you, and I think I found you on Facebook, and I went and I listened to it a little bit before I said yes, because I've been burned before, because I'm such a, yes, I'll do it. And then I'm like, oh man, why did I agree to this? And not in a bad way, but it's just like, this is not my cup of tea.
Right.
But no, this definitely, yeah.
Well, what you said, I could actually see. If you'll notice, there's another mic right here that I've only used once because I don't want to have more than 2 guests on a time, because then it's just too many people talking, and then you don't hear anything. So I've actually thought about that, and so we'll see what happens.
Cool.
And
yeah.
so, all right. So you were going to segue in from you had listened to the Frank King episode about the funny side of suicide.
So, and that's not what I'm talking about. That's not the part I'm talking about. Although I shared with you earlier, although the very next day that I listened to that, somebody was, private messaging me, not so much sharing that they're suicidal, but, they shared in certain words, and I immediately, cut and pasted. I said, here, listen, this crosses beyond what I do as a psychic medium. I said, make sure you get help, and they immediately replied back with something that was a little more understanding, a little more positive, but it was one of those things where it's like, they're halfway around the world, kind of a thing. But so Frank is his name?
Yes, yeah. Frank King, yes.
So I'm listening to this podcast and I'm going, are you kidding me? So for 8 months, my husband and I have planned this incredible vacation that we were going to leave on March 10th, which is coming up after this podcast. And 5 weeks ago, we had to cancel it because our wonderful cruise was going to fly into Hong Kong, get on a boat, and go to Shanghai and Beijing and all this stuff. And according to this, coronavirus is crazy. Everything's out there. The boat we were going to get on was the Westerdam. That is the boat that gentleman was on, yes. And I'm sitting here listening to it, and then I'm thinking, do I know this guy? Because it's Holland America's ship, and they have been great with us. We literally jumped ship, and we're going out of a different place, San Diego down, Central America, which has not been flagged by any, COVID-19 yet. But I'm literally listening to it, and he's talking, and it was funny because, I pulled up Twitter one day and it's like they kept showing the boat that bounced from port to port to port. Nobody would let him in. And finally, I'm like, what? That's the boat. 40 days later, we would have been on the boat. Yep. And it was funny, what he mentioned. So I love that kind of synchronistic stuff. I mean, it happens all the time. Like one day I saw the word Angus. And then the next day I meet an Angus. And then the next day someone says, let's go eat at the Angus Beef House. So finally, I look up what Angus means, and the meaning was very important for stuff I was going through right now. I don't remember what it is because it was months ago, but it was one of those things. It was like when the synchronistic things happen, dig a little deeper, ask a few more questions, Google search, find out what this could be for you. Because one of my friends did stuff called all-day divining, and for me, what that means is just being aware all day long of your surroundings and what's going on. And when something piques your curiosity, just dig a little deeper and just say, wonder what that means. And usually you get the answers. I can't remember if it was ancient Egypt or Greek, but it's called Cledonism, Cledonism. And it's a practice of waking up in the morning, having quandaries, questions, pondering your thoughts, looking for answers. And you set the intention to find the answers. And then you walk out into the marketplace and you just listen to snippets of conversation and you find your answers. And I was thinking, man, our modern Cledonism is, song titles and radios and memes. How many times have you been wondering about something and the song comes on, you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I need to do. That's the exact thing that I've been kind of wanting to find out about. Or, you're looking for, a new producer or something like that. And all of a sudden, boom, somebody says, hey, I love your podcast. I'm a producer. Boom, there you go. Next thing. So it just comes naturally with that.
Yes. And, the funny thing is that I do that constantly. And one time I had a dream and the question was, what is the meaning of life? And the answer came to me in my dream. And I was like, oh, that is such a simple answer. But it was the correct answer. And yet when I woke up, I couldn't remember what the answer was. And I was like, oh, man, that was so frustrating. And I was like, I had it and it's gone. So you obviously you believe there is life after death.
Yeah.
And what does that look like to you, or do you have any concept or idea of that?
For me, it's an example or metaphor used, like the ocean. The ocean is like where we go afterwards. And right now, holding up a bottle of water, this is me in flesh form. There's water inside this bottle. It takes form. And then when I die, it's like opening the bottle up and pouring it back into the ocean. We become one with all. And like we both do, hypnotherapy. We do past life regression and things and stuff like that. I'm a big believer that, outside of this body, there really isn't time. So what is past and what is present? It's all happening at the same time. So that's I always keep that in my mind when I talk about, past, present, and future. So, once I leave this body, I feel like I'm back in spirit form, but yet I'm already there because there is no time. So it's like, it just takes your brain around. It reminds me of when I was a kid and I tried to expand my mind to have the concept of what space was, where it goes on forever and ever and ever. And I would think of it. And all of a sudden I would get like anxious feelings and I would have to just pull my thought back. Because if the universe just continues on to infinity, what does that look like? Right. How does that feel? And my brain would just get muddled with that. I have to just pull the thought back.
It could be overwhelming trying to figure that all out.
Like I said, I hope I get more than most right.
I had lost my train of thought here for a second. So, dealing with the dead, and you said that you don't get a lot of that. I would have thought that was probably one of the biggest things. What process do you go through? Like, if I said, "Hey, I want to talk to somebody," and do you say, "Well, I need a few moments," or is it something that just happens, or are you talking? Can you be talking to me, and then somebody just comes up and goes, "Hey, I want to talk to him."
Yeah.
Does that happen, or?
Yeah, for me it does. I don't usually need a Ally McBeal moment. I don't usually need a moment. I've always been just quick and fast, in and out. I do 30-minute sessions. Most people, I want more time. I'm like, trust me, I'm going to do a lot of talking. You're going to do a lot of listening. But, and if you have questions, you can ask them. But, it's like a subtle energy. Like if you're in your house and or you're in a room and somebody's moving towards you, but they haven't come into the room yet. It's kind of like that. And then when I do feel that energy, I just kind of ask some questions, who are you? Or, in my mind, the energy may show me an image. It may feel older. It might, if I feel it kind of above their head, then that kind of means like mother, father, grandfather. If I feel it kind of like to the side of them. And I'm not someone who sees objectively, meaning like I'm looking at you and I can see you. That's objectively. But subjectively, in my mind, I might see someone standing next to you, and it's all up in here. And that's the other thing. Most mediums are not seeing grandma standing next to you. Very seldom. And most of them will tell you that if you go to their private workshops. It's not like they see you objectively standing there. Do they see a ghost walk through the house? Maybe, but that's not the norm. The belief behind that is it takes those on the other side a lot of energy to manifest. And if you're a medium, you raise up to their energy, they come down a little bit, you can connect. So it's like, why waste their time and energy if you can get up to them? If you're, again, I'm more coaching here and now stuff. So if someone's sitting there and all of a sudden they say, I'm hoping to talk to someone, I said, well, don't tell me right now. I said, let me dive in and just see if any energy comes up. If it doesn't, then I may finally say, tell me the name of the person you want to connect with. And, can't guarantee they'll come through. And my goal at that point is to describe them, what they look like, characteristics, without them giving me information, which is evidential mediumship. And that's what, real good mediums try to do, is give you the evidence without asking for it. Profession, maybe how they died. Like the other day, I'm talking about someone, I said, why am I being drawn to my ovaries? I don't have them, but why am I being drawn to them? And we're talking about their grandmother. She says, well, she died of ovarian cancer. I said, okay, then that makes me feel good. Like we're on the right path with who, because my first thought is, am I talking to the person they want me to talk to? Have I identified the right person? Because I'm talking to somebody, and when I first started, that was my biggest frustration as a medium. I would sit in the classroom and I'd say, blah, 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 blah. I'm getting this, I'm getting that, I'm getting this. And like everybody in the room was like, no, I don't know who that is. And I would just drive home beating the steering wheel, just so frustrated. And that my goal then became to have laser-like focus, to focus in, because I think I was probably like a radio band that was just open to everything at that point. And with laser-like focus, I think that's helped me to, be able to tune into them and what's going on.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay. So if you can't or whatever, I completely understand, because I am talking to you as we're doing this. I would love to talk to someone.
Okay.
Okay. And if that person, comes to you or whatever, just let me know. I mean, I don't know if it's possible when I'm talking to you and you've got your attention on certain things that we're talking about. Like, for instance, I want to talk to you about, what do you say to people who sit there and say, the things that you do are of the devil, and there's a lot of religious people who say that, and that tarot cards are like the Ouija board. And then I want to ask you, do you feel that way? Like, is the Ouija board, is it real? Is it, the same as tarot cards in your estimation? Is it, so what do you say to those people?
So talking about
right.
the evil stuff first?
Yeah. So we'll talk about.
Because I come from, and I didn't grow up conservative, but I threw myself in the Nazarene church at 21 years old. And fully invested, went off to a Christian liberal arts university. I read that Bible so many times. I know it very well. And that was one of my biggest struggles coming out of that, coming to grips with being gay, coming to grips with being a psychic and medium. And, if they tell me that they think it's of the devil, that's their business. I don't get those people anymore. And I think that's because I don't care.
Right.
The last time I got that, I was sitting in a Starbucks reading about crystals, and this lady, I could tell she was just one of those people who wanted to get in someone's business. And she's like, "What are you reading?" I said, "Oh, I'm reading about crystals." And she says, "Oh, well, that's not really good. I'm a Christian person." I said, "Well, what I really go by is Proverbs 3:5-6, which is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path." So I feel like he's directing my path right now. Shut her up so quick, and she just backed off. But and also, I'll never forget walking into my pastor's office years ago and just saying, "Hey, I'm struggling with this, struggling with that." And he threw the Bible down, flipped it open, just thumbed through the pages, pointed his finger down, and said, "Okay," and he pointed to a scripture and read it. And it was extremely appropriate for what I was going through. And I look back on that and go, holy shit, he was divining right out of the Bible.
What was it?
I can't remember that. I can't remember what it was. But I'm like, that is no different than me pulling a tarot card, and trust me, I believe true scripture, not how it's interpreted,
right.
But true scripture, I believe it is extremely powerful because it's had years and years and years of repetition. It's just like spells that, and I'm not a witch and I don't do witch work, but I have a ton of witch friends. But spells are setting an intention. And they're the reason they're so powerful is because they've had years and years and years and years and years of work, and the intention and stuff behind it, the power behind it is very powerful, just like scripture is. So tarot, and here's this funny story that I've told. I told it at the biggest convention in the U.S. I was on the main stage teaching tarot cards and hypnosis and how they can work together, and it was fascinating.
I bet.
For transformation.
Right.
So, and I'm telling kind of who I am, and I said, and I need to tell y'all something. The first deck I ever picked up, the first time I had a bad day, I did what a lot of Christians do. What's causing this? What's evil in my life? And I took the deck, walked out of my house, walked down the road, threw it in the garbage can, and came home. You could have heard there was 150 people going, gasping that I threw the deck away. And I said, since then I've apologized to the deck, and I believe in my heart that someone who needed that deck somehow got it for free. So even I had that backlash of fear over it because I felt it was inappropriate. The Ouija board, when I was younger, we played with them, used them, things like that. I don't have one. I don't own one. I don't think they're evil. I remember reading, and I don't use it, so I didn't hold on to this. But I remember reading like a lot of the intention behind its creation was just a little heavier, a little denser. So it could have just, and again, everybody talks about it. So there's intention and manifesting. Okay, it's evil. I mean, people, half the people are saying that's evil. While the other half are going, no, it's great. I use it for, helping me find problems and stuff like that. But I think more people, because it's a physical board that was marketed probably by US Games or somebody,
right.
For the last however many years. So I think the negativity has probably been brought on by society, and then again been reinforced over and over and over. And just like I got scared of the tarot cards and threw them away, I think one day we got rid of the Ouija board. But let me tell you what, the times I used it, it was pretty fascinating. But again, I think the idea behind tarot is you're connecting with cards and decks. The idea behind like a Ouija board is you're connecting with the dead on the other side at that moment, who's in the room, moving the palette, I think they call it.
Yeah.
So I think that could be why it kind of scares so many people. But it's funny because I just saw the preview for the new movie Candyman, and I was like, I remember looking in the mirror as a kid saying that 5 times, thinking, "What the heck was I what was I doing?" But again, it carries power and it carries fear and
right.
It carries whatever it does. So
it certainly does. Again, my best friend, he to this, well, I won't say to this day, just recently, I think he's gotten over it. Psycho is the movie that scares him to death, and
wow.
and up to the point where we lived together, and he would lock the bathroom door every time he goes in because he was deathly afraid that someone's going to stab him in the shower. And I'm like, there's nobody here but me, and I'm not going to do it, And so
did he watch the Bates Motel series?
Yes, he did. Yes,
phenomenal.
Yeah, It was a very good show, and he in fact it's because I think because of Psycho, he's a big horror fan, and like he's probably an expert in that area. I think he's seen every horror, as I call them, horrible movies that ever made that were made of horror about horror, and he's just an expert in the area. He knows so much about it. If I ask him I go, "Have you seen this movie?" Like some off the wall thing from 40 years ago. He goes, "Yeah, I've seen it." And I go, "Really?" And but he loves it, and so and he said Freddy Krueger was another one that scared him to death. And
I love those movies because of the shift of reality. Is it a dream? Is it not? I mean, that was fascinating to me. The one that is my childhood nightmare is Jaws. Because I went and saw that probably when I was 10 years old or whatever. I'll never forget going to Lakeland Theater to see it. And that night, the white head in the boat that jumped out, it popped out in my dream time. And I love the ocean. I love the water. Sharks are fascinating, but that was a powerful one for me.
I had a very good friend who was in that movie.
Really?
He was the little kid.
The very first one?
The very first one. His name's Jonathan Searle, and he was, shout out to you, Jonathan. He actually lives on Martha's Vineyard to this day. Him and his brother were in the movie. They were the ones with the shark fin on their back, and he's the one who got to say he made me do it.
Oh my!
And so he gets like a $300 check every month ever since that movie's been out, and it put him through college. So it's amazing. But yeah, his father is the chief of police of Edgartown. And they still have the some of the props from the movie from back then. So it's amazing.
See how psychic you are. Think about that era of Jaws. What was because this is my favorite movie of all time. And I was, it's like 10 years old. The biggest blockbuster ghost movie back in that time, like in the 70s, early 70s.
Early ghost movie? I mean, other than Ghostbusters, but that was early 70s.
Like a scary movie.
Oh, you're talking about like The Exorcist, or
I love those, but no, Poltergeist. That was
Poltergeist.
That is my all-time favorite movie.
I found that was so weird when that little girl died, like at such a young age. I was I remember that movie. It had a guy who played Coach, Craig T. Nelson, in it. Yeah. And I loved him in Coach.
And the Conjuring movies have been really good. I actually know the woman who was the eldest daughter in the real life movie. She actually lives here in Central Florida.
Oh, really?
So if you ever want to get someone on your podcast to talk about something crazy, she said they could not make the movie was what really happened because people would run from the room screaming.
We'll talk about that after our show. So,
and you said if anyone wants to come through. So so let me explain kind of how I work. So like the moment you said that, I immediately see first of all I saw a cigarette. So and then I see it's funny because in my mind I see just like like someone might have their like an old painting and it shows like the collar of their shirt but nothing below and their head, and it looks like it would have been like real old, maybe painting or photograph, I can't tell which. Tight curly gray hair. I feel like there might have been glasses, and it makes me feel like it's a grandmother. But the funny thing is the cigarette smoking. So I don't know if she was a smoker or not, and she feels extremely petite. And then as I talk, this is what comes through. She feels very petite. She also felt like during the last part of her life, she got very swollen, like in her body, not fat, but swollen. Because I felt like she was always pretty petite. And she might have been a seamstress because there's an attention to the clothes and attention to either creating them or making them or something. And then what I would say is, does that make any sense to you? And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's what I feel. And so I would say if it doesn't make any sense, is grandmother passed on? Is that connection to her at all?
I had, both my grandmothers have passed on. And I don't, again, I didn't know a whole lot. It's really weird. I didn't know a whole lot about them. I don't think she was a seamstress. And she was, in her, later days, in her 80s, she, the one on my mother's side, she did have gray hair, and it was probably tightly knit, but she was, and probably, I could see swollen, probably,
And what I would say is just, those, because you probably didn't know her that well, you probably didn't know stuff about her, hold on to that. And if you're ever talking to, family members or it comes up, then it may make a connection. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And
Right.
that's, that's where it's like, that's the energy that came through. And if it doesn't fit at all, then what I would say is, thanks for, in my mind, I would say, thanks for coming, but I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why you're here. But it's funny because it's like she just pokes her head in and almost like wants to pull it back out. So it's just kind of a weird like imagery, like she's sticking her head in, sticking her business in, and then get back out of here. So
It's interesting.
yeah. And the funny part is, like I said, I talked about, when I was learning and how, I would say things and like nobody in the room could connect to it at all. It'd be one of those things like, okay, what does it mean? And I just, if we were doing a session, I would like just dig a little bit deeper or, say, okay, can you move aside and see if there's somebody else, that wants to come through. And it's not so much like move aside, like the way a lot of mediums talk, it's like they're doing like, can you just move aside? For me, it's just like, I dismiss her energy and see if there's somebody else wants to come through. So
well, if anyone else comes through before we're done here, and we're about to wrap this up, I was going to say, I'm not a psychic, and but I think I can predict the number one question that people ask you.
What are the lotto numbers?
There, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, and then the second one is, when's he going to call me? And I always say Tuesday. So, do I play the lotto? No. Does my husband? Every week,
And
twice
he
a week.
never ask you like,
No.
you got any feelings?
But I will say this. I think we were in Tennessee, and I remember literally waking up, and my mouth, I was going 13, 42, 5, 6. I was saying five. Is it 5 numbers? Is that lotto?
6 numbers,
Six
I
numbers.
think.
I was saying 6 numbers just over and over and over and over and over. And I like, because we're in a hotel or somewhere, I didn't have like a pad and paper. And I grabbed my phone and I started typing them in. And the last number was, I was like, was it 56 or 58? So I wrote down both numbers. So I literally went, I've never felt compelled, and I'll tell you the ending, I didn't win, but I never felt compelled to buy lotto so strongly. And I bought a row of each, with the alternate ending number. And there might have been like 2 or 3, but it was one of those where I literally went, oh my God, this would be an amazing story.
Yes,
but
it
it's
would.
not.
But then
But
you
it's
probably
not.
wouldn't do my show.
Yeah. No. And I will say this, the thought of, and I can imagine a lot of people do this, but when I start to daydream about winning the lotto, I do get a little anxious. How will life change? Will I still be the same? Will my relationship stay the same? Will I keep working? It's like you start the ball rolling, and it becomes sometimes, for me, it becomes overwhelming, and I usually just back off and don't do it. With my husband, I always say, reinvest what you win. don't add that on top of
Right,
what
exactly.
you're doing. But yeah, so that is pretty much the number one question.
Well, Mitchell, I'll tell you what, this has been a lot of fun today, and
Thank
I'm really glad that you took the time out to come down and do the show with me. And I'd like to have you back on.
Oh, I'd love to.
Sometime up the road, because you're a great guest, and maybe maybe next time we'll do a reading or something. And,
Yeah, I'll bring my cards.
all right, that sounds great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
And,
you.
folks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Take care until then. Bye.
Bye.
The Powers Project.